Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chief Rick Brandt. I'll be moderating this fantastic panel today, New Strategies in Law Enforcement. And if I may briefly, the panelists that we have here today are truly the thought leaders in Colorado and the innovators in Colorado with new strategies and change to address the ever-growing opioid crisis we're all dealing with. These folks, each of them in their own ways, in their own organizations, dared to view their jobs and the role of law enforcement in a new light. Each of my colleagues have responded to the opioid crisis within their communities in innovative ways, and they've introduced new strategies that they're going to be talking about here shortly. And I don't want to make it sound simple, because change in law enforcement in the criminal justice system is not, there's nothing simple about change in those arenas, right? Especially in law enforcement when we're dealing with police officers. There's two things cops absolutely hate: change and the way things are. And they have the courage to stand up in front of their communities, in front of their departments, and say, we need to do something new. So with that, I have to my left retired Chief of Police Terrence Gordon. He's from Thornton PD, Lieutenant Stacy Schaefer from Larimer County SO, and my favorite sheriff, Summit County Sheriff Jamie Fitzsimons.
There's a couple other sheriffs that you said again.
They're my second favorites, though. So with that, if I may, I'm going to have each of these folks talk about the strategies they've implemented, why they did it, what they did to get to where they are, and eventually what's next. So in that frame, what has been your personal experience creating these innovations, these programs, these strategies to challenge the traditional roles of law enforcement in light of the opioid crisis? And Stacy, can I start with you?
Stacy Schaefer, Larimer County. I know some of you in this room, and you're also my favorite sheriff as well. So just letting you know. Oops. My sheriff's not here, so he's not here, but that's all right. So one of the strategies that I wanted to talk about is really my partnership with the medical provider at our facility. And anything that we've done has been in that partnership, because it starts with healthcare. And one of the things that I think was critically important is that we started to look at what lane does healthcare play in our facility, and then what lane does enforcement play in our facility. And that means that when we have folks in our facility that are doing what we call diversion, and diversion isn't always a good thing, right, in this capacity, where someone is actually playing out some of those habits that they had before they got incarcerated, where they're trading the medication that was meant for them. And one of the key things with that is we decided that diversion was going to be part of the process, and that in that we were going to say, all right, we don't like it, but we're not going to take your medication away because you do it. And we had to in partnership with our healthcare provider, we said, all right, we're leaving it up to the doctor stays in their lane, they do the medicine part, and then the rest of the security custody in our facility, the custody side is saying, all right, you might have to spend the next 24 hours in your room thinking about what you did because we didn't like it, but we're not going to take your medication away. And in light of that as well, we looked at what we call bridge dosing. So when someone comes to jail, historically, they would be removed from medication. They wouldn't have access to a physician to prescribe right away. And so they'd start detox in jail. And detox in jail is horrible. Jail's pretty horrible already, but then you're sick and you're in a communal setting. You don't feel good, you're angry, you're just crabby, and all of that is happening all at once. And so what we did is we worked on what we call bridge dosing. So we're allowing for a dose to be given of typically buprenorphine, but we're starting that medication right away. And we don't let anyone, even on the worst timeline, it's a holiday weekend, and it might be 36 hours, but it wasn't going to go 5 days, 7 days that it did before. We're getting them in to see the provider, and we've got orders for that bridge dosing. So all of those things about just saying, all right, medicine is medicine, working in good partnership with our medical provider, that was critical, and working through some of those challenges and breaking through those traditions of how we treat people when they're found themselves in a carceral setting.
Thank you, Lieutenant Chief.
I'm still getting over. I was going to say I'm still getting over that last session that was in here. There was a lot. So what we did in Thornton, and I'll speak briefly about what we're doing, and more broadly on what I'd like to see the profession do as well in the future. When you talk about law enforcement, it's not just police. Prosecutors are law enforcers. Corrections officers are law enforcers. So it's a very broad profession to speak about law enforcement. What we did in Thornton was we already know when there's an overdose. We talk about crime prevention, so I wanted to focus on death prevention. It's more important to me to try to save people's lives than to worry about that tavern that's playing music too loud. We spend a lot of resources on stuff like that. But so we decided to apply for grant funding to get co-responders because we were a little behind the curve on that, but not just for mental health, not just for that aspect of wellness, but also for substance use. So we were lucky enough to get a great co-responder lead, and I'm not saying that because I think she's in the room, but she was recognized throughout Adams County as one of the best practitioners in the business to follow up on non-fatal overdoses, because we know that with this poison that's out there now, the dose that you took yesterday that just got you high, if you take that dose today, it might kill you. So the role, and it's taken a long time to get this off the ground. It was really hard to hire. It's hard to hire for these roles right now. But follow up, to refer people to treatment, to hopefully manage their cases, to work with the city prosecutors and the prosecutors in the 17th Judicial District on diversion when it's appropriate. And to refer not just for substance use, because it's not a different person that misuses substances that might also have job placement issues. It's not a different person who might misuse substance that has educational needs or needs for life skills or needs for health relationships or needs for financial literacy. It's the same person. So the goal, the hope, is to be able to treat the whole person. We have a tendency in our country to fight fires. No offense to firefighters. We have to put out what's burning now and not necessarily focus on what caused it in the first place. So that's what I retired about 3 weeks ago. So that's what they're doing right now in the city of Thornton with varying degrees of success because all the resources aren't there. So the need for partnerships it's critical, because if any one of us sets out to do this on our own, we've already failed.
Sheriff, if you would, please.
Okay, I think it's on. Hey, thank you, first of all, everyone, for being here. I mean, we've all gone to conferences where by the 4 o'clock conference, the room's pretty empty, so it's pretty great to see everybody here. You know, boy, people have talked about it up here, the other people on the panel, about partnerships, community partnerships, other stakeholders involved in all this stuff. You know, I got to tell you, you know, in Summit County, we've certainly come a long way. In 2016, when I became sheriff, our community was in crisis. We had probably the highest rate of suicide. We did have the highest rate of suicide in the country. Opioid abuse was out of control. Overdoses At the time, probably the most robust thing we had going for opioid, the fight against opioids, was a drug take-back program, pretty robust one, where we eventually distributed these boxes all over the county. When I took over as sheriff, our jail was pretty full. We have a 92-bed facility. We had part of the crisis of Summit County. When I say crisis, the entire community, the entire county, was that we had a community mental health center that had failed the county. We were on the far east end of a 10-county region. As you all know, with grant funding, it sure feels like or seems like the further you are away from the mothership, the less services you get. So I did something that was pretty unique at the time. When I became sheriff, I went to the state and I tried to get to sever my relationship with this community mental health center, and I went to the state and at the time, Office of Behavioral Health, if any of those people are in here that used to be with OBH, and said, hey, how about if whatever funding you're giving this community health center, you give those funds to me, and I will do this. I will create a co-response team. I will create a jail-based team, and these people will work for me. I will create these. I didn't know how, I didn't know why. Started researching all over, not only the state of Colorado, but all over the country about co-responder and jail-based teams to see what was going on out there. And at the time came back, once OBH went along with it, told me I was crazy, but okay, if you think you're gonna try to do this. And as Terrence talked about, I started my own co-response team, where these people actually, on my co-response team, the teams are made up of the teams are made of three. It's a deputy, a clinician, and a case manager. They all work for me, including the clinician. I have a clinical program manager that also works on the team, that oversees the clinical side of the team. Then I have a lieutenant that oversees the law enforcement part of the team. Hugely successful team. Where we used to literally kick everyone out the back door kick everyone out of the back seat of the police car at the back of an ER and dump them off. As I say, we literally broke the back of our ER department, our local hospital in Summit. To today, I think they have something like a 92% stabilization in place rate, which is huge, huge. County-wide team that responds, so they even respond in the municipalities. Plain clothes, plain car response. So if they were to show up at your house, your neighbors wouldn't know that it was the sheriff's office there. Hugely successful. At the same time, I started looking at how I would do this in the jail, because the same community mental health center that was providing services in the county was also providing them in the jail. And right before I became sheriff, we had a woman in our jail that was suffering from postpartum that committed suicide. And then at the same time, we had, like I told you, in 2016, by the end of 2016, we were the highest suicide rate in the country, Summit County, little Summit County. So what I did was I eventually created the exact same sort of response team that I had in the community now in the jail. So I created a jail-based team that also works for me, that is a clinician, a clinical case manager, and law enforcement. And so that team was very successful at starting to maintain order in the jail. And by 2019, we started introducing MAT services. At the time, I think we were one of 16 jails in the state that offered MAT services. We started by bringing that in, and I would tell you that over the years we have built up our programming in the jail to include things like besides group therapy, besides MAT, we also offer EMDR, we offer AccuDetox, we offer CrossFit to go along with therapy, therapeutic CrossFit in the jail. And we just started brain synchronization with brain tapping devices. So all of these are to say that, years later now, and we've incorporated a pretrial services team. So we've gone from a full 92-bed facility to our daily population hovers somewhere in the 20s because of our pretrial services team. This isn't to say that all of these teams don't work with our district attorney, our public defender, our community-based. We have a huge community-based structure that supports these teams and definitely lends an ear to these teams and it serves as an advisory capacity to these teams. But I would tell you that there isn't a crisis that someone couldn't suffer in Summit County that these teams couldn't solve, and the stakeholders we have, the community partners we have, couldn't solve. And I know for a fact that our district attorney's office, the door is open to go talk about someone in crisis that may have committed a crime. So these people are all in. It's not just me. And I can tell you that I like to talk about these programs were constructed from the community up, as you know, versus the sheriff down. They truly are all community-based programs, and they're very successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. That's an amazing story, and the level of commitment and foresight that you needed to accomplish it. You know, I think one of the takeaways I've taken from each of your stories is the amount of effort and the importance of the partnerships and the relationships that you built outside of law enforcement. And that's something new for us, right? Law enforcement's always been a closed society, and we were, you know, sort of relied upon to take care of the problems. But the innovative people, the leadership in this state, the tip of the spears, I like to call them, had the foresight to go out and understand the importance of building those relationships and building those networks to make these things successful. Chief, you talked about this almost like a wraparound service of your vision. Can you talk about how you accomplished some of the partnerships and the relationships that you fostered?
I have to be honest with you, all the partnerships aren't there. There's just not a lot of services in Adams County right now. It was very difficult, even as a member of the regional council, to even find people to apply for grant funding, because there just wasn't a lot there. So they're still working on it. And the thing is, when it comes to being in senior leadership, whether you're in policing or any field or agency that's represented here, we can't just say there's nothing and then bang our against a one time and leave. You got to keep going. We have to advocate, all of us, we have to continuously advocate for on-demand treatment. Because at 5 o'clock when everybody goes home, people are not going to decide not to go into crisis. So I really can't answer the question, because the people who are working on it back there aren't really getting too far yet.
Yeah, I think we can all appreciate the lack of resources and the difficulty in getting people harnessed together. Stacy, from your perspective, can you talk about the relationships that you fostered?
My favorite word is yet. So when you look at roadblocks, and in this room I noticed that Dr. J.K. Costello is in the room with the Stedman Group and helped us create what we perceived as a really big ask when we started with the medication-assisted treatment in the jail. It was daunting, and you wrote a lot of words on a lot of pieces of paper that we were supposed to do something with, and we did it, but I just wanted to say that. And then Amanda Jarman, our health service administrator, Amanda had to look at me several times and say, oh no, we can't do, no, okay, we're going to do this. And so just keep going, and the yet becomes that pivotal word. And then to the community, really what we started out with in Larimer County was a grassroots effort. And I made the community owners of it, because when the sheriff, honestly, when the sheriff's office owns it, what do? We overregulate it. We say, we've got rules, all right? We're going to follow these rules, and we're going to put restrictions around it, and we're going to say no a bunch of times, don't we? We do that, yeah. We do that. So I said, all right, I'm going to buy a breakfast, I'm going to get a room, and then I'm going to invite the community to come in and tell me what they want. What do you want to see coming out of your jail? And then all of you are going to own it. So all my meeting notes, all the recordings, all the clever little things that we did in our room, became owned by the community. Everybody got on a Google Doc and they owned it. And so we called it the Stone Soup Group, because it's about that children's story where you start with nothing, you're making water out of it. Just look it up. You'll find the story. If you don't know it, you'll find the story. It's retold many times, but you're making something out of nothing, essentially a rock in a pot with boiling water. That's all you start with. And then you start with little add-ons. So at this point, we've got over 60 organizations coming together, and the rule is they have to bring a friend, right? So bring a friend, and I will feed you the most glorious buffet for breakfast. If we meet, we eat, and that is how we got folks coming in. But it's really, you can't move faster than what your community is allowing you to do, no matter what the funding is. If your community isn't engaged or inspired or ready to show up at early hours of the morning to do this work, they won't help you. And it's amazing what happens when you allow them to enter into this space and invite them into law enforcement. Make sure that they understand that we're not scary. We're not scary at all, none of us. But the idea is to bring that community together. And that's what I found is been the difference for us.
Thanks, Stacy. Sheriff, you've had some obviously market success with your community, where the chief has been experiencing what happens early on, right? Trying to find those relationships, trying to build those resources and make those connections. That takes a lot of time. Where did you have your greatest challenges and successes when you were putting together this grandiose plan that you had that's obviously successful?
Thanks for the question, Rick. I would say that, when we started this down this road, and it's been 8 years now, the community, all of us, were vulnerable and had been harmed, by what was going on in the community. So, as you all know, in vulnerable moments like that is when it's the easiest to coalesce and come together, because you have common ground. So I would tell you that my community partnerships have been strong right out of the box, and encouraging and inspiring. I'm very fortunate that way. Where I find the biggest hurdles and the biggest challenges are in the systems that we all go up against, the different machines, whether it be the hospital systems, whether it be physical health hospital systems, whether it be the mental health hospitals, competency, whether it be the judicial system. These are where we just can't seem to get out of our own way still. Outside of my office, I've got this sticker right on my office door that says, "Because we've always done it that way," with a line through it. And I always appreciate how people walk up in my office, because it's kind of like at eye level, and always comment on that, like, that's you. That's definitely you. Because I don't get what, I get frustrated by asking people that run these places, well, can't we just change that? And they're like, oh, I don't know. We've always done it this way. Do you know what I mean? And nobody seems to know the answer or wants to work that hard to get the answer. One of our, we have, I was just talking, is Dr. Brooks in here? We were just talking outside, and one of the challenges we currently have is, our team is, our co-responder team and our jail-based team have made some terrific inroads to some hospitals where we can do some direct admits, which is huge, right? Because my whole thing is to get people away from getting ER bills and then a bill from a community mental health center. But some of these community mental health centers require, a screening, whatever that screening is. And I say whatever that screening is because, of course, there's no consistency, right? It's all different. Everyone has a different requirement. And so I go to my local hospital and I say, isn't there a way that we can screen these people and not bill them? Because sometimes it's some really simple tests they need. I said, what baffles me is I can bring someone here in handcuffs under arrest for a DUI and get a full clearance and drug screening, and I don't get billed for it. But I bring someone here in crisis, not in custody, and you tell me that they have to become a patient of the hospital and that you've got to bill them. And so then I go, well, can we work on changing this? And then you get that, well, we've run this by legal, and oh my God, this is a system-wide change, and we're a national hospital, and nobody wants to stick their neck out at the corporate level to get some of these changes done. And I would tell you it's the same way for my jail-based team. My jail-based team, when they try, to do a direct admits into treatment, people leaving custody to get into treatment, one of the biggest hurdles they run into is places don't want to deal with someone while they're in custody. Even though you're working on a plan for when they leave custody in the next 24 hours. It's all of a sudden it's a different list, or you don't get the return call, or call us when they're out. And the problem is once we don't have control over once they're out. But it's the frustration of, I guess, Rick, of systems not wanting, corporate systems not wanting to change at the speed of where we need change. We need change now.
Thank you, Sheriff. So we're coming to a close in our time, but I'd like to spend our last few minutes before we go to questions, maybe getting your thoughts on what's next for law enforcement in this space. If you had the magic wand, what is the next vision that you would have for law enforcement in this space? And Chief, may I start with you?
I would say my vision would be we pick up where Jamie left off, where we get together. I'm talking senior leaders, not just in policing, but elected officials, hospital officials, other practitioners. We make the rules. So how are we letting our own rules and processes get in the way? So that's what I would suggest, a standard, consistent approach. We've got a new health department in Adams County, and that director is out of sight. But I guarantee you she's got calluses on her forehead too now from banging them against the walls because she wants to do things. States have health and human services, whatever the hell cabinet positions they are. There's a cabinet level position in D.C. for health and human services. I've never heard that man talking about this issue. Somebody who calls themselves a leader has to step forward and lead, okay? There are a lot of us who already have jobs. Sheriff, he's got a job. He's responsible for safety. He's responsible for the jail. Now he's also responsible for substance use and mental health issues in his county. Somebody else needs to be doing that. We're all at work already. So let's break down the barriers and get started. Well, that's not fair. We've already gotten started. We've already gotten started. We need to run a little bit faster in the right direction. Those of us who were on the streets 20 years ago saw this coming, and nobody was listening.
Very well said, Chief. Stacy, what does that soup taste like when it's done?
Well, the soup tastes pretty good, but I'm telling you that the system is doing exactly what the system was meant to be. And until you have systemic change, like we've just heard about, that will continue to try these grassroots efforts, which work to an extent, but we need to have that change. And we had a lovely presentation about Medicaid and being useful in the jails and being able to get some money going towards that service while somebody's incarcerated, and seeing what that does. But that's a year more away, and I think that is really the next step, is really how do we break down the systems and do something different than what we've always done before.
Stacy, I think we all agree with that. I think each of you have said the same thing, that we're hitting our heads against an entrenched system. Sheriff, your final thoughts on where are we going?
Yeah, I think I would just add to what's been said is, for us, especially in Summit, is increase access to services. I mean, we are we've got no services really. I mean, very little services in Summit County. Just about to open an OTP, which is awesome. But we have no residential treatment. We have no reentry services. We have no, I'd love to see increased access to services. I'd also like to see these services include also healing the family as a whole, and not just the whether it be the inmate or the person in crisis in the community that we're trying to make whole, that we realize that this is a systemic family issue, and that we need to heal the whole family. So thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. I just got the signal that we're about out of time. We have some few minutes left for some questions if anybody has any for our panelists, and we have several, so here we go.
Thank you very much. I'm Eric Stone, Teller County, Region 16. If you guys had if only they would, or if only we could, you got a bunch of ROACs in the room that have resources called money. How would you answer that question?
We need places. We need treatment facilities. We need workforce development. There's not enough employees out there. We also need, it's got to be free. And I don't want to hear anybody talking about I'm a socialist. It's got to be free. I have to apologize for my level of energy today, but we recently buried a relative who died from an opioid overdose. She tried everything and was turned away. She went to the Mayo Clinic and was turned away. They had insurance, but they couldn't afford long-term inpatient care, which we know works, but where are these places? So we've got to build infrastructure, and it's got to be affordable or it's got to be free. And we've got to change laws, because right now, insurance companies don't have to cover it. We know it can save somebody's life, but it's too expensive. So we've got to build, and like I said, the grants are great, but we have the potential of using $787 million to build infrastructure that is sustainable, that's long-term. Eventually, this is going to run its course, but there'll always be something else. Are we going to be sitting here again at conferences like this trying to figure it out?
I'm so sorry to hear about your loss, Chief. Sergeant Solis, I'm also live in Thornton as well, and I am one of on the Adams County Opioid Abatement Advisory Council, and I was with that Solis on that. And our frustration was also in that 5 times more than any of the other funding went to immediate care for clean needles and Narcan and all those are important things. It's opioid abatement, people, and we have to be funding the longer solutions. Adis was saying, you know, like wash, rinse, repeat. Our hands are tied. We arrest these people. We have no place to take them, by the way, and I feel so sorry, Sheriff Fitzsimmons, that you have nothing up there, but you think we are in Thornton and we're in the Northern Corridor and we have no resources for detox or things like that. And we're arresting people, and 2 days later, guess who's on the streets? Because they've got no resources. They stabilize them just enough in our emergency rooms to keep them alive and kick them back on the streets. We give no ability to give the long-term solutions for help for these people, and it is a mental health crisis. So I just wanted to say that, and I just want to say thank you all for your work. I'm so sorry for your loss. Stout Street Foundation is a 2-year live-in treatment program. We take all of Colorado, and we are free. We are free service. So please come see me if you don't know who Stout Street Foundation is.
Any other questions?
One of the ways that I had to sell this idea to a lot of law enforcement was we had the same problem. This is just our old problem. And one of the things that I did is I brought pink donuts with rainbow sprinkles to every single meeting. And I'd set them in the back of the room. I'd let that smell permeate the room. And then I'd start talking about, you got it, science, about the brain science of addiction. And I asked the room, I said, all right, who's been listening to me? And they'd kind of nod their heads and whatnot. And I said, all right, who's thinking about those donuts in the back of the room? I know you are. Okay, go get your donut. But you've got this sugar problem. You've got this sugar addiction. And here's how we're going to deal with this situation. So when you think about what it's like to bring MAT in, if you could take a pill to settle your brain and maybe not go for that donut. No, not that I'm taking anyone's inventory, but there's none of us that need a pink donut with sprinkles on it, right? So we would have that conversation and do it in a communal way, a fun way, and people start to say, okay, I get it now. I get what you're talking about, because I couldn't think of anything else but getting that little sugar rush with my coffee this morning. And it's cops, right? So we like donuts, right? Yeah, we like donuts. The stereotype is true. It really is in my organization. But make it so that it was easier, and then people started to listen. And then we got things going, and now we have like Narcan out in the front of the sheriff's office. We've got a newspaper box full of Narcan, and we're reducing that stigma because it's something that everybody was dealing with sugar. And I know I get you that, okay, Dr. Costello, I know it's not exactly the right parallel, but it worked. So little tricks like that kind of help.
Really quick, along that same lines, we have a few law enforcement agencies within our council, and they're requesting things that aren't on the approved list and things that are more like enforcement and detection. And I wanted to see what your thoughts were on that in terms of this funding and what you've seen as sufficient work. And then also, if you have any advice, obviously it's important work as well. I just don't know what would you say to help us mitigate this?
You know, sadly, it sounds like, you know, the sheriffs and chiefs that believe in this need to do a little bit more education with our counterparts. I mean, I think that's where it starts. I can tell you that, at least for me in Summit, the reason why our programs are successful is because the sheriff is leading the charge. And people, you know, I believe that people want leadership and people want to follow good leadership. And we just got to do a better job at talking to those law enforcement officials. Unfortunately, you can't, you know, you're not going to be able to change their minds. But Casey, we got work to do.
Hi. Do you think Colorado would be better off if we had kind of a statewide or even regional-wide diversion and deflection programs where maybe the regions were helping each other out with resources so that you could actually send people into treatment in a different region. Yeah, I'd love to hear your response on that.
I should probably just leave it on. If you're asking me personally, in my opinion of that, I think it'd be great if regions could just share across regions. Share everything. It's a better way to success.
I think there's some injustice, if you will, to being a person that might be driving through the state and be arrested in one county and be treated completely differently than they would in a different county. How is that fair? We're all Coloradans.
Was that a question or a statement? It felt like a statement. You know what? It depends. If you're talking about treatment, it's one thing. If you're talking about legal troubles, it's a whole other. That's a whole other ball of yarn to untangle. Yeah. But when you talk about diversion, there's also diversion on the I've been arrested side. You know, or about to be arrested. If you're talking about diversion of treatment, yeah, it would be great if we could and treat people, you know, either where they are or where they're, you know, where they. If their home is not where you're coming across them, it'd be great to, like we do with mental health, treat them where they are and get them to where they need to be. But we'd all have to play nice in the sandbox and get along. So.
Question?
Hi, I was just hoping to ask, it's so rare that I have 4 cops sitting in front of me, so I wanted to take advantage. I've seen a lot of municipalities passing camping bans in the last several months, and I was curious if you could speak to whether or not you're seeing benefits from that or drawbacks.
There's not a camping ban in the city of Thornton, but they're working on one. And this is another issue. Again, it's firefighting. There's a need at times for these camping bans. Cities need to be able to regulate order and disorder in the public spaces. There's a need for it. But we've been working on homeless issues for, 30 years now, and it's worse. So, again, if we have a comprehensive approach to this whole person wellness issue, it'll also take care of homelessness. That's a different conference, though.
All right, it looks like we've reached the end of our time together. Thank you all so much for attending. If you would please give our panelists a round of applause. Have a great evening.